Hey, good morning and welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show. Today is Thursday, December 17th, show number 11.
Wow.
I know, man. We're almost there to an even dozen. So for those of you who are just now joining us, for the first time, the Ride Along Radio Show is based on the premise that we will lend our considerable police expertise, being our training, our experience as police officers. I think between the two of us, we've got 35 years?
Something like that.
Just between the two of us, let alone anybody else who might be sitting in one of these chairs. So
Right.
Something like that at a couple of different agencies. And we're able to address the stories of the day, topics that are of importance to both the community and law enforcement with our informed perspective. And we don't hold anything back. We don't sugarcoat anything or pull any punches.
That's right. Being a former ghetto cop, I keep it 100.
100, man.
That's what I do.
Exactly. And, and we can do that. Now that we're retired coppers, former coppers, we are able to give you the straight dope, unadulterated, without fear of consequences, repercussions, or retribution by the administration. So that's going to be my standard disclaimer, I think, coming in. The consequences, repercussions, or retribution by the administration.
Because if you understand the politics of police work, it can get pretty hairy.
Yeah, and people think that, cops close ranks and, the police department is going to protect them. The police department will protect an individual officer if it's in the police department's interest to do so.
That's right.
If it's not in the police officer's interest to do so, the police department, or more specifically, if it's not in the police chief's best interest to do so,
right.
Not going to protect that officer. That officer is going under the bus.
You could be Officer of the Year today and sitting in front of the grand jury tomorrow, and they will take 10 steps back from you.
Exactly. As we say, you can go from hero to zero.
That's right.
Overnight.
In 30 seconds.
Less than 30, not even overnight. 30 seconds, yeah. Exactly. So, and we've seen that time and time again. So for people who think that there's this, not that there's not a thin blue line, okay, and not that the code of silence doesn't exist, but it is not as impermeable as you might think. And officers nowadays, if you don't realize that you're more vulnerable now and held more accountable now and will be held up and what's the word I'm looking for? Scrutinized. Man, unprecedented scrutiny.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that the scrutiny is unwarranted, but sometimes it can be. It just depends on what's politically feasible. Let me ask you guys something. If you, those of you who are in Chicagoland, or Chirac, as Spike Lee calls it, you don't think that your mayor, Rombo, Rahm Emanuel, that he doesn't have some blood on his hands or some accountability in this whole thing? He should be held accountable. But you saw how quickly that officer got rolled up. But that should have happened a long time ago. But then the chief gets rolled up, and everybody in law enforcement circles is saying that was a mistake. That chief was actually the person that was in the best position and had the best standing to get things fixed. But it was politically expedient for him to go. So he went. Well,
McCarthy, he's one of these progressive chiefs. Just because somebody's a cop doesn't mean that they're 100% law enforcement. Not a Daryl Gates. Daryl Gates was kind of the standard for a policeman's policeman. The chief who never forgot, even as he rose through the ranks, never forgot what it was like and what you had to face as a street policeman pushing a black and white around the city, responding to radio calls and trying to deal with criminals on a daily basis. And so he more than often gave the officers the benefit of the doubt because of he understood the job at a street level. And McCarthy's not one of those guys. And you can't separate these days, I don't think, politics from anything now. And Chicago has a long history of corrupt politicians. Rahm Emanuel came from Obama's administration. Obama himself is a Chicago politician. No one who knows anything about history.
Well, yeah,
and I've been around a minute. That's why my hair's this color, and I remember things.
Chicago's had issues since way back, even before O'Hare,
right,
and everything else.
Back to the Mayor Daley days.
Yeah, exactly. So, let me say this, okay? And having met Daryl Gates, and God rest his soul, I'm not going to speak ill of the dead. Daryl Gates was a good police chief in that his officers loved him, his officers respected him, his officers would have followed him down the barrel of a cannon. But as chief of police, you got to serve the city also. You got to serve the community also. And Daryl Gates did fall short in that, and on more than one occasion. But that doesn't mean that he was a bad chief. It just means that there's more. So what I'm saying is I'm trying to jump on Gil's point of politics.
You're losing me here because I don't know what you're talking about in terms of...
You don't know what I'm talking about.
In terms of serving the whole city? I have no idea.
The chief of police is supposed to serve the city.
Yeah, and I've been a lifelong resident
and not just
of the city of
officers.
Los Angeles.
The chief of police is not just supposed to serve his officers. I mean, the chief of police is supposed to lead his officers, but he's accountable to the public before he's accountable to police unions and to the rank and file or whatever. And Daryl Gates didn't always do that.
Didn't always do what?
He didn't always look out for the entire city. Daryl Gates
what part of the
always.
City, what part of the city are you talking about?
You were in L.A. during the '92 riots, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Were you around when Daryl Gates made the comments about the chokehold and normal people and all that stuff?
I use the term normal people all the time to refer to non-criminals.
That's not what he was talking about, though. He used the term normal people to refer to non-black people.
Okay.
So... I'm just, I was here. I was there. You know, I born and raised in L.A. Was a cop in L.A. for 25 years. So I remember that. Mm-hmm. And I remember Daryl Gates wasn't always that cool with us either in terms of where we worked. And I know you remember that when we changed uniforms.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not waving the Daryl Gates flag. Good chief in one regard, but there's so much more to being a chief. So, but let's jump into our show here today, and we didn't even introduce ourselves. We just started talking. We only got 11 shows under our belt. And we think
show
everybody
number
knows who
11.
we are. I know, right? All right. So I'm George Holt. 25 years law enforcement experience. Worked a variety of assignments. One of the first people I met when I came out of the police academy, put on a uniform and jumped in a police car was this man right here, Mr. Gil Contreras.
Yeah. I was FTO when George was just a
Field
young
training officer,
just a young boot looking around. George looked like this when he came on the department, like all rookies, eyes wide open, didn't know what the hell's going on yet. But look at him 25 years later.
I know, huh? Yeah, and looking every bit of it too.
So
we're Kent Lee is out today. Kent's been out on travel, and so we hope to have him back here shortly. But we're going to actually have a guest co-host come in today. And he's going to fill in for Kent, and that is police officer turned comedian Roger Rod. But we'll introduce Roger formally when he comes in and give him a big round of applause and a big ride-along show welcome.
Wow, a round of applause.
A round of applause.
I don't think I ever got that, but that's cool.
There's two of us.
That's cool.
You know, so we'll have to take turns clapping.
Maybe it could be that Latinos don't get a round of applause.
Well, if you guys are normal people.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
They call it a callback in comedy.
This is the kind of banter that goes on in a police car.
Exactly right. Exactly right. That's what we call it the Ride Along Radio Show. We try to give you guys the experience of riding in a police car with two grizzled law enforcement veterans who don't give a damn, who are going to shoot you straight.
That's right.
And, if you were to get in a police car and be in that environment for 10, 12 hours a day, you'd be amazed at the variety of topics that get covered. Once people have a rapport with each other, some of the silliness that goes on in a police car, some of the stuff we laugh about, some of the stuff that gets us motivated and gets us going. It's really an interesting workspace. And
when you can be in the police car and you can be bantering back and forth like this, just cruising around, listen to the radio, respond to your stuff. And then go from 0 to 90 miles an hour in 10 seconds.
Oh yeah,
it can just pop off right in front of you, or you get a radio call, or you see something, or somebody's waving you down, and everything just switches in a hot minute. That's pretty cool. Well,
you know what, and that's what I love about that workspace, and as opposed to being in a cubicle or something.
Right.
I don't know of any other job where you could be sitting there talking with your coworker one minute, and 10 seconds later you guys are running down the street at full speed.
Right.
Or be driving down guns in your hand,
driving down the street talking about where we're going to eat. It was me and Tommy Segovia, Scooby. We're driving down the street talking about where we're going to eat. The next thing we know, somebody's shooting at the car, and about 25 seconds later, my partner shoots the suspect. I mean, just from hey, you want to go to IHOP? I don't know. Next thing you know, shots fired.
Yeah, right. Where else did that happen? And that was one of the things, not the shooting people or going to IHOP thing. But the fact that it was a dynamic work environment was one of the things that drew me to law enforcement. I never wanted to sit behind a desk for a living. It just was, and go to the same place and deal with the same people and do the same thing over and over again. It just was something that would have been mind-numbing to me. It wouldn't have been something I enjoyed at all. So I enjoyed being out in the field and having stuff change all the time.
And I'd say, once you do it, there's nothing else to do. That's why, as long as I've been out of law enforcement, I still stay in those circles. I'm a licensed investigator, a canine officer. I have a drug detection dog. We're adding bomb dogs now because my phone was buzzing all morning the other day.
Exactly.
When LAUSD shut down. So, once you do this, it's very hard to want to do anything else.
And you know what? And we're actually going to get to that in a second. But what we're going to do, and we're going to talk about the LAUSD thing. But our first news segment of the day is going to be the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department's Linwood shooting incident. This happened last week at some point. And essentially, it was a suspect who had been shooting in the air and had been pointing the gun at people. People called, and people always forget. The police typically show up to stuff because somebody called.
That's right.
Somebody felt this was a danger. This is something that we need to bring the police in to handle. And they did that, and they showed up, confronted the subject. He did not comply. In fact, I believe he pointed the gun at the officers. And we actually have a video of the of that incident here. Can we go to full screen on that, POTUS? All right, so here's the video. So,
did you hear that guy at the end? Those are real bullets.
Yeah, because there were some questions whether it's less lethal. So, as you may notice, we have another person joining us right now. This is comedian, police officer turned comedian Roger Rod, who's also an actor, and has been out of law enforcement for a little while. But like Gil just said, your heart's in it. Once you're in it,
that's right.
You're in it, man. And he's going to offer some perspective on this. Now, in this situation, we see something that looks it's tough for people to digest something like that. As we always say, police work isn't pretty. Right. And the optics on this were such that it looked like the guy was gunned down, and as he was crawling away trying to get to the emergency room, the police kept shooting him and killing him. I mean, that's what it looked like to people. I read
to the emergency room. Wow.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what people were saying. Oh, he was trying to get away from them. He was trying to. Well, I will admit again, the optics look bad. In that.
I didn't think this one looked too bad.
Immediately I did. First thing I said was they got some splaining to do, but I knew that this is what an investigation is for. So although from one angle that we see, maybe it looks bad, and maybe it looks like he was just gunned down and they kept shooting him even after he was laying on the ground. And in fact, one of the suspect's relatives said they overkilled him. Mm-hmm. Okay. The general consensus I have seen seems to be that, yeah, he needed to be shot, but they went too far. I think it was a total of 30 rounds, 32 rounds, something like that.
Well, it's two officers, and they're each carrying guns that carry 15 rounds. So the number
right, and there was a reload in there, and people look at that and they go, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened." In fact, we got a tweet from listener Tantizi saying that I'm going to read you the exact tweet that says, "My opinion on the Linwood incident is the police were excessive. However, it was justified." And I have to agree with that in terms of it being justified. Now, excessive is, listen, dead is dead. If you can use deadly force, you can use deadly force. Now, we don't shoot people to kill them in spite of popular opinion. We shoot to stop. Well, if you look at the video, he was on the ground, and yes, he was crawling. However, well, let's back up. Let's talk about the initial shooting. He apparently had ignored their commands to stop.
Right.
He pointed a gun at the deputies, and then he began walking away toward a convenience store. I believe it was.
From the gas station or something.
It was one of those mini marts in the gas station kind of a thing. And there were people in there. And they were concerned because he had been pointing the gun at people and had been shooting in the air. They let him get in that convenience store, in that mini mart. Now he's got hostages, or now he's got a bunch of victims bottled up. So under California, we have what we call the fleeing felon rule, which says that a police officer can use deadly force to stop somebody from escaping if that person has the means and the ability to hurt people and to continue hurting people. They've already
if he poses a greater threat to the public,
right? Because he'd already shown that he was violent. He pointed a gun at people. He shot up in the air, and now he still had the gun, and he was going toward a structure where there were people inside.
Right.
So under fleeing felon rule, the initial shooting was clearly justify. And I don't think most people dispute that. I think,
Right.
think people understand
and
that.
here's why I don't think it was excessive, because as they're walking, you know, and we were just on the range with you guys the other day, right?
Right.
We're on the range with you and Grant, and you know, so when you start talking about sight picture, sight alignment, your front sight, a moving target, and distance.
Right.
You know, because of that distance, I was watching the deputies, right? And so they're firing their handguns, and the suspect's not moving. So if you're the officer and you're shooting it and your target isn't going down, that means either he's wearing body armor or you're not hitting the target.
Well, he went down pretty quickly after the first couple of rounds.
That's why
they continued to shoot as he was on the ground, but that's okay.
Right, but just because he kept moving, because
Right.
you can't tell from that distance. But I'm just saying that most officers train for a gunfight to be between 3 to 9 feet, 5 to 11, whatever
Right.
number you want to choose. And that's where it normally occurs. But when it gets out to 25 feet, now
now marksmanship comes into play a lot more. Sure,
exactly,
definitely. When you have those extended ranges.
So I wasn't surprised that both officers at least emptied one clip trying to stop that guy.
Clip.
Magazine.
Clips are for little girls' hair.
Right. When I was in the Army back in the day, we called them.
Oh
clips.
wow, you guys had clips back.
We did.
A long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. We're going to get back in that. We're going to give Roger Rod a proper introduction, and then we'll jump into this topic and a couple of more that we have. So we'll see you guys in a minute. All right, and we're back at the Right Along Radio Show. So we're going to give our guest co-host here a proper introduction. So coming to the stage, we have
live from Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. We have a police officer turned actor, comedian, and professional poker player, Mr. Roger Rod.
Thank you very much for having me, gentlemen. A pleasure to meet you both. And first off, I always am full of opinions, and I have to bow in deference to my two distinguished co-hosts because I only did around 3 years of law enforcement. These gentlemen both have a couple of decades or more in, but as they will attest to, one shift will turn your head around about how you feel about police officers. So I'm sure they're looking at me as though, I'm sorry, I know you didn't put as many years in as we did, but your opinion still values because you have worn the Sam Brown.
That's
you
right.
have been in the chair and seen how actually this job plays out. Now, as far as my weigh in on every situation is always from both sides. I always try to look at both sides because I've been a citizen a lot longer than I've been an officer, but I certainly know the other side of it. Mm-hmm. The first problem is people are judging these videos with some very erroneous foundations. Let's start with the fact that every fucking one of them looks like it was a Bigfoot clip. And now people are so certain they know exactly what was happening. Yeah. And the other side of it is that they never know what happened before the camera started rolling.
Right.
That's what always really essentially comes down to what you were saying. Somebody called. Why did they call? Because there was a man with a gun shooting it. There was a clear and present danger to the public. And when I hear people say, why didn't they tase him? Fuck you. You get in the car and you point a fucking taser at somebody with a gun if you think, why didn't they tase him? Let's start off with that.
Somebody asked that too, by the way, on one of the clips. One of the news clips, video clips, somebody said, "Well, how come they didn't tase him?"
I've heard. How come they just didn't shoot him in the leg?
That's a big
how come they didn't shoot the gun out of his hand?
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know. Really, we can just play the Wild West out there. Shoot the gun out of his hand. He doesn't even get a scratch out of it. But as far as the way I looked at it, the issue of a man with a gun that is now clearly waving it around. I was not able to see that at one point he was directly facing an officer pointing a gun. I didn't see that. I'm not saying it didn't exist. I'm saying I didn't see it.
Right.
So therefore, I must withhold judgment. Second thing is, knowing police officers, there are bad ones, there are good ones, but I cannot conjure up a time when there would be a man with his back turned to them, they point the gun and shoot him in the back. Now, that has happened. Mm-hmm. We have seen that goofball in whatever state it was that had a misdemeanor, and the guy flees on a misdemeanor.
Walter Scott, South Carolina.
I mean, that is just absolutely out of line. That's homicide. There's no justification for that. But then again, the other side of the coin is, guess how that never happens? If you sit your ass in the car and don't run away. So there's that part of it too.
You know what? And that's the key ingredient in many of these instances.
Zero compliance.
Zero compliance.
Every
time.
When
you run from the police, you fight with the police, you're going to get a negative response. It is not justified.
You're going to lose that. You're going to lose that every time.
This doesn't justify, well, unless you get away, right? But even then, you're still going to get caught eventually. But it doesn't justify anybody being killed or beaten unjustly or anything like that. But everything from Freddie Gray started with him running away. Walter Scott started with him running away. Even the Eric Garner situation started with noncompliance and fighting.
That's right.
Again, this doesn't justify people being killed unnecessarily by the police, but I think that that's a common denominator here, because this is everything we just talked about has happened spread across the country.
Right.
Whether it's West Coast, East Coast, down south, these officers don't know each other. They didn't go to the same academy, so it's not like they all were trained to respond inappropriately.
Right.
The trigger was citizen noncompliance.
Right, but in today's political climate, what you have is you now have a segment of the society that believes that any use of force by law enforcement is now excessive.
Right,
if you use any
foolish.
force, it's excessive, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's foolish. It's ridiculous, because we keep saying that police work isn't pretty. Now, there are people who probably get into law enforcement to beat people, but if that's what you sign up for, you're going to be sorely disappointed because you don't get to do it that often, number one. Number two, if that's what you sign up for, you're probably not going to get past the psych. You're not going to get off the training program. But it is a part of the job that you do have to use force sometimes. This is why they give us the tools of ignorance that we wear on our Sam Browns, right? The batons, the pepper sprays, the pistols, the flashlights, and all the other things that end up being used as weapons. So that is part of the job. And you're occasionally going to see police violence. All police violence is not bad. Most police violence is not bad. We have to use force to take people to jail who don't want to go, because nobody wants to go.
Nobody wants to go to jail.
Well, nobody wants to go.
No criminal.
Some people, nobody wants to go. But some people really, really, really don't want to go, and they're willing to fight you and kill you to stop.
If you're a three-striker, gang member, dope dealer, career criminal, you don't want to go back to prison.
No. Well, you know what? And even those guys who are comfortable in the joint, who are institutionalized, even though they do things that bring police attention to them and cause them to go back to prison, and they're probably a little relieved. There used to be guys that we grew up with that when they got out of prison and they'd be back hanging around the neighborhood, we would refer to that guy as just being on vacation. Oh, he's on vacation. Oh, okay, cool. Because we know he's going to be back in about 30 to 45 days.
Right. Because
he's a criminal, and that's his environment is the penitentiary. So that was our joke, that guy was just on vacation. But even those guys are still going to, sometimes fight and resist, just because they maybe don't want to get caught with whatever's on them and add more time or whatever.
And to make stand their ground. I remember those two officers down in Hawthorne. Homie went toe to toe with them, and he knocked one of the officers out. And broke his jaw.
Oh yeah,
we saw the video.
About 6 months, a year ago.
Yeah, about a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
These guys are not afraid of you. The career criminals, guys who've been in and out of the system. Your biggest threat is a parolee.
Well, exactly, and that was one of the first things I learned, because where I grew up in a part of Los Angeles where we didn't have a lot of interaction with the police, not like in other areas. But once I came on the job, I began to realize that people ain't afraid of you. That badge doesn't mean to everybody what it meant to me growing up. It's not looked at as a symbol of authority or something that's to be respected.
It's only to normal people. Normal people see the badge,
non-criminal,
and they slow down. They see okay. Well, I don't want to break any laws because I don't want to deal with that guy.
There's another place that we're not going, that nobody's going, that really segues into an entirely different topic, is starting the argument where I believe it belongs, and that is, first off, what kind of an enlightened society do we call ourselves when prisons have been allowed to be privatized and turned into free labor slave camps for profit? That is a problem. That is the beginning of the issue. The second is, what is putting people in these prisons that are now becoming part of the slave program? If we were to legalize drugs, prostitution, and gambling overnight, we have gangs and organized crime out of business.
Well,
and all of that money that is being used.
They'd have to find something else to do. Because
wait, what do you want to legalize? What?
Drugs, prostitution, and gambling.
Prostitution and gambling.
Yeah. And
okay,
why not?
And hold on now. In the great state of Nevada, right next door, prostitution and gambling are legal.
Not everywhere. It's only certain counties.
Right,
in Nevada.
but I'm just saying that's an example of a nearby area where prostitution
every street
and
is a stroho.
Hostro.
Hostro.
Yeah, every street is not a hostro in Vegas, allegedly. So But next door in the great state of Nevada, we do have areas that are zoned for legal prostitution. Just like you can't just gamble any place. You can't just open up a crap game in the middle of the street.
Right.
Those are victimless crimes.
And
those are crimes that are victimless.
Well, we say they're victimless, and that was the traditional thinking, was that prostitution is a victimless crime because both parties are consenting. But now we're seeing with the sex trafficking that both parties may not be consenting, and, well, at least in some of it. Now, obviously, though, if it's legalized and there's licensing like there is in Nevada, everybody's of age.
I don't know. I think we should call LVMPG. We should call it LV Metro and see what they think.
Well, see, it's not legal in their area. So any prostitution they run into is going to be illegal prostitution because they're not policing an area where prostitution is legal.
But they're in that state.
Yeah, but they're not. They don't police an area where it's legal. So they wouldn't. They wouldn't know about it like we know about it. It's illegal.
They have to deal with it just like everybody else does. The
right.
drugs,
But I'm saying they don't have any more standing to know about it than anyone else because it's not legal in their jurisdiction. The areas where it's legal, I don't know. We'd have to get Speedy on the phone there, Poetess, and find out where. The areas where it's legal in Nevada.
Who's Speedy?
Comedian Speedy. He's on another show. And
he knows where all the hoes.
He's been to the what is it? The Bunny Ranch. He's been to the Bunny Ranch.
Really though?
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Yeah. And so apparently, unless you're a former Laker / Clipper and you go there and overindulge, it's a pretty safe environment because of it's controlled and it's regulated. But prostitution, as it is now, as it stands now, it's not a victimless crime simply because of all the ancillary crap that goes on around it, the drugs and the violence. And that's because it's illegal.
It's stemming from the fact that it's illegal, same as drugs.
Sure.
If you want a role model, don't try Las Vegas, Nevada. Take a look at Holland. Those things are legal in Holland, and they have a very enlightened, organized, crime-free society. Yes.
Wow.
Now, first of all, let's just deal with the fact that drugs are illegal, right? Is there any place on planet Earth that is more controlled than a jail, where they look up your ass in a jail and they can't even keep fucking drugs out of jail? How are you going to keep them off the streets? Easiest place to score drugs? Go to jail. You can get whatever you want.
And I can attest to that. Not that I've had my ass looked up, but I've had to look up asses in jail. Every time we put the felony suspect, right? You had to look up their ass. So, I mean, we looked up enough asses
I call it the hokey pokey. Turn your left, right, turn the right.
right, exactly, right? Stick your tongue out, turn around, lift the bottom of your feet up.
Do the hokey pokey.
Spread your fingers, spread your toes, spread your ass. And we would look up there to make sure that there was nothing, no drugs hanging out at least. I wasn't going to stick my finger in there, but to make sure that there was nothing.
Well, that wasn't your job now. What are you talking about?
Right, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't my job to do that, right? That's somebody else's job. Or somebody will handle that for him when he gets in there.
We'd have to hope it doesn't become a hobby.
But you're right. That was something that's a very controlled environment. And yet drugs are still there.
Rampant.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you were to take all the money we spend so-called fighting the war on drugs, the DEA is getting trillions of dollars, and they eventually turn into a toll booth on the highway. It's a corrupt system to begin with, along with the Central Intelligence Agency. And let's take that money, and instead you already touched on what the biggest crime is that nobody's paying any attention to, human trafficking. That dwarfs the profits of the drug business.
Well,
and that is a far bigger crime.
And that's why you're seeing gangs get into that.
Victimless crime with drugs. It's the same thing as alcohol being legal. It's up to, let me think, how about fucking parents raise their kids and tell them better than to do drugs at an early age? How about the government isn't everybody's mommy and daddy? You want to be my parents? My mommy and daddy paid my doctor and dentist bills. You want to step up and be my parents? Start paying my fucking bills.
That's the Obama administration, right?
What? The Obama administration is paying people's bills?
Taking care of the dental and medical?
I ain't saying shit out of it. They ain't doing anything for me. They're not. And if you want to call what we got health care, we don't have health care. We got insurance companies profiting by fucking people out of the coverage.
And that's exactly what that was all about in terms of insurance companies had run wild. But we're going to get into national politics in a second. So let's get back to the drug legalization. We're going to talk about that on a future show anyway.
Right.
To me, I can think of so many instances where officers wouldn't have lost their lives, where we wouldn't have seen a lot of the horseshit that's gone on in the streets if drugs were legal. And I hearken back to the rise of organized crime in this country. Organized crime was funded the same way that gangs have been funded by drugs recently and for the last 20, 30 years.
By alcohol.
Alcohol, the rise of Al Capone, gangster number one, the gangster zero, so to speak.
Public enemy
number one was fueled by illegal alcohol sales. Alcohol made money for them like dope makes money
for the
gang
Mexican
members
cartels.
And then there was
Exactly.
also gambling they threw in there too as well.
Right, exactly. Well, let's talk about that. Las Vegas, Nevada was there as a little donkey town, but it became what it is now because gangsters started it, specifically Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel. He didn't like to be called Bugsy, but there's nothing he can do about it now. Benjamin Siegel. And if you go to the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas and you walk into the courtyard in the back, there is a monument to Bugsy Siegel at the back of the Flamingo Hotel with a brass plaque, and it tells the story of his life and everything. Because that town was founded by gangsters to do what? Gambling.
Gamble.
And what they did was they found a way to make all those things that had been illegal and were now legal. They found a way to profit from it, or to create an environment where all that stuff would be legal, and they could have their own little environment. But you know what? Those guys, when they ran that town, and I was getting a massage in Vegas 20 years ago, talking to a guy who was an old school Vegas guy, one of the guys who they say shook Sinatra's hand, right? One of those
Rat
guys.
Pack guy.
And he explained to me as he's giving me the massage, he goes, this town used to be a hell of a lot better when Joey, Louie, and Tony ran it. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, when Joey, Louie, and Tony ran this town, there was no petty crime because they stayed on top of that. They made sure it didn't go down because they didn't want to mess up this little utopia that they had created for themselves where they could do all this stuff legally. They kept it straight. So if you look at the fact that alcohol was illegal, and the fact that it was illegal meant that Al Capone, Kennedy's, etc., could profit from bootlegging, you saw that. Yeah, I saw like I slipped that in
Dog
there.
whistle. Yeah.
Yeah, they were able to take that and fuel the rise of organized crime. But once alcohol became legal, that knocked the bottom out of that for them. But they still had gambling and they still had prostitution. So I think if you look at alcohol and you look at, to me, even though I don't use marijuana, I look at marijuana and alcohol as being largely the same in terms of the level of public threat. And in fact, alcohol is probably a little worse. If I think about how many bar fights that I've had to respond to, if I think about how many alcohol fuel incidents and drunk drivers I've arrested, we doesn't do that.
Domestics. And what, first off, I'll put it, let's just take it to a step worse. You got a choice. I'm going to put you on a highway, and you have two choices. That highway is full of cokeheads, full of heroin users that are under the influence. You can drive on that highway or an entire highway full of shit-faced drunk drivers. Guess which one I'm taking? Every fucking time, put me with the cokeheads and the heroin users.
Well, I don't put the heroin.
Wow.
I'm going to look heroin as, in terms of driving while you're high on heroin, I'm looking at that as you're driving. Yeah.
While you sleep.
might as well be drunk. Either that or they're all going to be pulled over the side of the road and added off, right?
I already have seen what drunk drivers do.
Oh, yeah. No, we definitely have.
And people shoot
doubt.
heroin and drive, and I don't see anywhere near their track record next to alcohol.
But let's talk about that.
I don't think.
But it's still illegal.
They're
It's
not
illegal.
driving.
It's illegal. You can have prescription
You got
drugs that
to
are legal.
see hypes. You got to see hypes first.
Well, it's
Okay.
illegal to drive under the influence of anything.
But
it
you
doesn't
take
matter
a
if it's
look-
prescription drugs or whatever. So nobody
Take a
should
look
be
at what
driving.
a hype looks like in a legalized heroin country like Amsterdam. They lead full-time jobs, have regular lives.
Because they don't- because
They're
heroin
not
doesn't
killing
cost
people for
$300 a balloon.
$20.
Yeah.
They're
Doesn't
not
cost-
killing gas station attendants for $20 bags, and they're also not getting shit that is
Battery
poison
acid,
to them.
strychnine,
Yes.
all the stuff that's in there.
So
That's true.
we have to factor in how the drug actually works if it were legal, if you could buy it at Walmart. After alcohol and cigarettes, which, by the way, kill more people every year than alcohol and cigarettes alone, dwarf crack cocaine, heroin, and meth combined, the deaths that are involved from alcohol and cigarettes.
Well,
That's a
that's
fact.
so widespread and through every level of our society and every demographic that people
it is
drink and
it is
smoke.
being co-signed all over the world as this drug is okay, and it's the hardest and most dangerous drug I've ever seen. And in 1 second, it's Partnership for a Drug-Free America, followed by this Buzz for You. What kind of a fucking message is that?
Well, and let's talk about that. How long was it? It was like a 25-year moratorium from the time that I was a kid until maybe 5 years ago. They couldn't have alcohol commercials on TV. You could only do beer and wine commercials, right? So this Buzz for You. Remember the Reuniti on Ice? That's an ice commercials.
Mm-hmm.
You could have beer and wine commercials, but you couldn't have hard alcohol
That
commercials.
makes sense.
Well, I know, but that was the thing. But now they can put Jack Daniel's commercials and what's the other one? Patron and everything else, Johnny Walker, whatever they can put on TV. And the reason for that moratorium was, they found that alcohol was a public health issue. Okay, or rather the abuse of alcohol was a public health issue. But just as alcohol is regulated, you could do the same thing, and we're starting to see that with marijuana. I'd actually like to see marijuana a little more available, a little more regulated, in that you should be able to walk into Walgreens and show how old you are and whatever else. And if you can buy a fifth of Jack Daniels, you should be able to buy a small quantity
I go
of marijuana
across the
for
board with that.
recreational use.
Okay, but watch this. When you talked about the fact that you just said, okay, here's how our society functions. All right, no more hard stuff advertised on TV, just beer and wine. All right, 3 officers here. Watch this. We all did vehicle stops. We all pulled over a suspected deuce, and you said the question.
Deuce is drunk driver.
Thank you. We all pull. When I get around other police officers, I start thinking I'm one again. So, okay, we pull over a DUI, and we said, quote, have you been drinking tonight? And they said, I have had
Two
a
beers.
couple of beers. Thank you
beers.
very
That
much.
was always the
I have
answer.
had 2 beers.
2 beers.
Every
2 beers.
fucking
2
time.
beers. Yep. That was always what they said.
So that always is the, hey, I really haven't been drinking. I've only had beer. And the last time I checked, we were all trained. A glass of beer is the same as a shot of whiskey. That's how it plays out with the blood alcohol content test. That's how it plays out. Alcohol is alcohol. But here's how our society thinks is, oh, you see, if we just keep the hard stuff away from them, they're going to be okay. Fuck that. Where's the consistency? Where does it make any sense?
Well, it's about who paid who, right?
Isn't that how it all works?
In terms of the lobbying for this and lobbying against that, and beer sales are probably generate much more money. If you think about the fact that you can buy beer at a convenience store after you get your gasoline, you can also get a 6-pack of beer.
They sell gas there?
Yeah. so you can do that, but in that same store, it's a separate license. In fact, there's a beer and wine license that ABC issues, a reseller. And then there's actually like a full-on license. I forget what it's called now, but
okay. Can I just back up just a little bit because I'm the one that ran my fucking mouth here. Let's get back to where we were talking about the shooting in Linwood.
Oh yeah, huh?
Okay. I know, and that was all on me. I'm sorry. I kind of segued off into something else.
Okay.
But here was my question, and this is again once we have that very poor quality video. We made the statement that a lot of rounds were fired, which they were. Mm-hmm. And they were fired from a considerable distance away, which they were. My first question was of the officers. I would have thought, because I can't see what he was doing on the ground to where I can clearly say they should have done this. I cannot be that judgmental. Mm-hmm. I would have thought, though, from what I saw, that he was facing in the other direction long enough that you could have done the classic, keep him at gunpoint, 1 foot up, drag 1 foot. At some point or another, the gun should have either been on the ground or then if he turns around, you open fire again. But I didn't see anything that even approached that they were ready to stop shooting. Let's forget the guy on the ground. He was the asshole with the gun. Mm-hmm. Let's start with that. How about I missed, it ricocheted and hit an innocent?
Well, the backdrop, right? And that's one of the things that police officers are trained to take into consideration when they shoot is not only what's their target they're shooting at, but what's beyond the target and what's between them and the target. So, yeah, the backdrop is always something because we don't want stray rounds. In fact, that was one of the reasons that law enforcement was able to justify using hollow point ammo because the old round nose bullets we used to use back in the day.
They just kept going.
They'd pass through the suspect and they'd hit somebody else. So now hollow points expand. They're better for stopping. You don't have to shoot somebody as many times to stop them. And they don't they will not ricochet as readily, and they typically stay in the suspect's body instead of passing off.
Right. I think, Roger raises a real good point, and it's something that we talked about on the range the other day with Grant Reynolds, and that is shooting, moving, and communicating. Had those officers fired some rounds, move, get off the X, get to a different position, talk to your partner. Partner, I'm moving to the left.
Yes.
Absolutely. I see exactly.
I was waiting to see better use of tactics. I was waiting to see use of cover. I was waiting to see those things that I did not see. But that made me think by their posture, and these are patrol legs. These aren't SWAT guys. These are patrol officers. But nowadays, patrol officers have an advanced level of training more than they did before.
A lot more than I got.
That's right.
So I was still expecting to see something in terms of shoot, move, and communicate. Those guys were standing there, completely erect, upright.
Yeah, you get this tunnel vision. It looked like they had the kind of just dang, he's not going down.
Like they were on the range. But that also said to me that they were not concerned for their own safety as much as they were the safety of the public. Well, taking them out and the safety of the public in terms of the people he's going toward. Because if they thought he was going to grab the gun and turn and shoot at them again, I think you would have seen cover. You might have seen some different posturing on their part. But their posture did not suggest to me that they felt they were under threat. This is one of those situations where police officers can shoot to protect themselves or to protect others. Immediate defensive life is what we talked about on the use of force show, right? IDOL, IDLE, immediate defensive life. and the suspect's on the ground, and he still either has a gun in his hand or it's within his reach, and he's still moving toward that gun, he can pick that gun up and discharge it at the people in the store, at the deputies in back of him. Those officers are going to still continue to shoot. And people say, well, that's overkill. Again, dead is dead, but we don't shoot to kill. We shoot to stop. And his immediate ongoing actions had not yet been stopped.
Correct.
And that's why they continue to shoot those
Okay, let
rounds.
me ask you, gentlemen, because you've both been in the game and I've been out for a long time. My days in the academy, you did shoot to kill. And as a matter of fact, the way it went down to where they said if somebody ever asked you, we had revolvers. You had 6 rounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we both
That's
carried
right.
revolvers in the academy.
I was top gun in my class with a revolver.
That's
All right.
it. And why did you shoot him 6 times? Well, because my weapon only holds 6 rounds. That's pretty much how it went.
Why do you carry a 45, officer? Because they don't make a 46.
Yeah, exactly right. But, I carried a revolver in the academy because I graduated from the police academy in January of 1989. And so that was still the thing, was a revolver. I came out in the streets, and you remember in September of that same year, we went to the semi-autos.
Correct.
So
That's
we
why I
all went
switched
out
to Beretta.
and I got a Beretta. Guys got Smith & Wessons or whatever, because that was the only 2 we could carry at the time. But when we talk about shoot to stop doesn't mean shoot somebody in the leg. Doesn't mean shoot the gun out of their hand, shoot them in the arm.
Shoot for the 10 ring.
Right, we shoot for the 10 ring. And the
fucking
10 ring is typically this area here
Central
in the
body.
torso. And the 10 ring is specifically right in here, right around your
Where
torso.
all the major
like if you took
organs are.
you took a medium-sized pizza and put it on your torso, that's about the size of the 10 ring, right? To use layman's terms. And we're trained that any rounds put in there will cause enough damage, enough disruption, large enough wound cavity to stop that suspect's immediate ongoing violent actions.
Right.
However, there is a high probability of death occurring.
Correct.
That's why it's called deadly force. So we say shoot to stop. Technically, we don't say shoot to kill because we're not trying to kill the person but stop the person. But you're not at all surprised when someone expires because you shot him in the chest or in the head, right? I mean, so that's kind of, we play these games with euphemisms and we have to speak in terms that are not offensive to people and they're a little more politically correct, but.
Right. People don't die from being shot unless it's a headshot. They don't die from being shot, though. They die from major organ damage and blood loss.
Right.
So within 3 minutes, if nobody tries to stop the bleeding, no matter where you're shot, you're just going to bleed out anyway.
And I don't know how many times the subject was hit in Linwood. Do they say?
I don't know.
Well, there's no autopsy report yet or anything. Okay.
That would be my first question, because I think they put
I'd sure like to know, though, after firing 15 or
32 rounds. Yeah, I think they both emptied out.
Yeah, I'd like to see. I'd like to see what the hit ratio, just for purely academic purposes. I'd like to see what the hit ratio was. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to get back. We're going to switch gears a little bit and get into at least one other subject, if not 2. And we will see you guys shortly. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right, and so we're back. We're back live on the Morris Media Live Network. Hey, I haven't given the phone number today because we've been talking so much that we wouldn't let you get a word in edgewise anyway. But feel free to give us a call, 323-293-3375, or you can tweet us at Right Along Radio if you have any questions, or you can send us an email, rightalongradioshow@gmail.com. But please do call in, 323-293-3375. I'm sure it's been broadcast across the bottom of the screen anyway while we were talking, but we need to say that too. So if you're just now joining us, I'm George Holt. This is Gil Contreras. This is Roger Rod. And we are all former law enforcement officers, and we're here to give you our perspective on a couple things. Now, we've been talking about the Sheriff's Department Linwood shooting incident, and due to time, I think we're gonna skip our school district thing and go right to the mistrial yesterday and the Freddie Gray incident in Baltimore. Those of you who are following that, the Freddie Gray case was a situation in Baltimore where we had a suspect who was fleeing from the police. Remember that key ingredient?
A narcotic suspect.
Narcotic suspect fleeing from the police. He was caught.
Wouldn't have been running.
If it was legal,
he wouldn't have been running.
That's right.
There you go, right?
Here we go again.
Yeah, right. It's a circular argument. On a serious note, he was taken into custody. He was handcuffed. He was put in the back of a van, like I think paddy wagon sort of a situation.
You got to back up a second.
Okay, go
he
ahead.
wasn't, quote, taken into custody, close quote. He fought with cops. They had to fight with him to get him into custody.
Okay.
And I suspect that the injuries that he had occurred during that fight, not in the back of that goddamn
Well,
van.
let me get to my setup then. Okay. So he was put in the van and apparently was complaining of that he had been injured and he needed help. He needed an ambulance. His cries were not, or his requests were not met. And then later he was discovered dead in the back of the same police van. And so now is what Gil is saying, that apparently there had been a fight. I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
There had been a fight.
right.
That's the one thing that I have yet to see. What was the PC for the original contact?
It was a narcotics contact.
Hang on. PC is probable cause for those of us who are outside law
All right, I did it
enforcement.
again.
Well, we always have to just kind of translate because people tune in because they want to know about that kind of stuff. So we have.
It was initially a narcotics contact. The suspect takes off running, and then they caught up to him, and it was I don't know, 4 officers. I don't remember exactly.
Now, when you say narcotics contact, you mean they were suspected of using, suspected
holding,
of dealing?
selling, something. I don't
Okay.
remember what the. But
And
it
so
was
the
narcotics
officer
related.
approaches to make some kind of a contact regarding a narcotics.
That's
beef.
right. And the career criminal, Freddie Gray, says, "Uh-oh,
Any rabbits?
it's the police."
Any rabbits? Okay.
He's gone. He's in the wind.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they catch up. Of course, they catch up, and then he's resisting because who wants to go to jail? And I suspect it was during that fight that he sustained the injuries to his neck that he sustained. Just wasn't enough to cause his death at that moment. When you're wrestling with people, especially once you get them on the ground, but you can't get the two hands together,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to get a grown man, and I don't care how strong you think you are, to try to get 2 arms, just get 2 arms back there. And he didn't have to be fighting with you, just resisting. It's very difficult to do. So I suspect that as they, and what officers will do is they'll get down there, right, and you put your knee on the back of the neck. That's a very dangerous place to put your knee or put your foot, or to
Right.
start pushing down on the head or
Sure.
the back of the neck. But you do it in the heat of battle, if you will. And I suspect that somebody did that in that fight. I suspect somebody had their knee on the back of his neck or something and put too much pressure back there and began to cause that damage.
And it would be natural that he wouldn't even feel it till later.
Exactly.
Because I had a partner. We got into a fight in Nickerson Gardens in Watts with a suspect, and finally take the guy into custody, grown man like you're talking about. Finally take this guy into custody, batons and everything, like a fist fight, batons, all that. And then we go eat, and my partner is writing the arrest report. No, I'm sorry. We take him, we book him. My partner's writing the arrest report, and then we go eat, and he tells me, man, my hand is hurting. I think I need to go to White Memorial and get my hand checked out. We get over there, and we find his hand is broken in 2 places. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't until hours later, after he wrote, and this is back in the day. Now, we didn't have these keyboards, you youngsters.
You wrote the shit out.
You
That's
wrote
what
a
I
police
did.
report by hand. Yeah. So he's writing the police report by hand, the whole arrest report, and he's sitting in a Chinese restaurant. I think he may even be using chopsticks. I don't know. But we went to Wancock, Alpine and New High. Alpine and New High, for those L.A. coppers know what I'm talking about. And so then they find out that his hand had been broken this whole time, but it was hours later. You know the booking system, how long it takes to book somebody on a felony. Mm-hmm. The guy had a felony warrant. So it's plausible that he didn't realize that he had those injuries at the time. So
I'm continuing to come back to the same common denominator, that this whole idea that the fleeing and disobedience of police officers is going to have a good result that the public has.
Right.
That is the one thing that would stop. I have yet to see the compliant person get killed.
That's right.
I have yet to see it. Now, does that mean that the killings are all justified? No, we can continue to agree upon that. But somebody has got to get the point across, particularly to Black America, that you feel like...
Whoa! I can't believe you said that.
Well, that's...
I can't believe he said that.
This is
Roger Rod.
What's the other common denominator with all this?
But I'm just saying that
talking about?
That's a politically incorrect thing to say.
Ain't nobody running for office
You must
here.
not have seen my act.
Yeah, nobody's running for office here.
Yeah. But this is where the problems continue to come from. And if somebody wants to actually put a race card into this, let's go with the fact that...
Well, you better give what's the phone number?
you can Google me. Look,
323-293-3375.
there's no such thing as bad press. There's just press.
I want to hear what they have to say about that.
Well, I don't know how anybody can deny that. I don't know how anybody can deny that. Thank you, Intern Darren. That is where we keep seeing this happen. Okay, and people may say, well, that's because black suspects get stopped more often, or black people get stopped more. It doesn't matter. If the police stop you, or make contact with you, you are supposed to comply. And I've said this over and over again, and those of you who are connected with me on social media can attest to this. And I've said it here on the show. You will not win trying to fight or run in the street. Now, you may get away if you run. You may get away. But there's helicopters and dogs and of course, the Motorola factor where we call in other police officers.
And the dog you wish you would run. The dog you wish you would.
The dog wishes you would.
That's right.
All right, well, let's take the race card out of it and put a colorblind and say, here's something that I have a really big problem with. This seems to become not just acceptable, but it's a form of fucking entertainment. How about the fleeing person in the car going 110 through neighborhoods with people I love and care about are at risk by some maniac, two-time loser who doesn't give a fuck what happens to him, or somebody joyriding or thrilling with the idea that, hey, I'm on TV and there's 500 cops chasing me. As far as I'm concerned, you take off in a car. I don't give a fuck what color you are. As far as I'm concerned, get the fucking sniper team out and take them out.
Hello.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that all fucking day. I'm good with that. You don't have any rights anymore when you're jeopardizing everybody in the public.
You're public
people
threat.
I care about, me, mine, everyone else. Fuck you if you don't care about that. I do.
Well, here's the other thing about that.
That's not a TV show. That's not entertainment. That's dangerous.
When I first came on the job, people say, well, why are we seeing all these high-speed pursuits now? We didn't used to see them. There's always been news channels and helicopters. My whole life, news people have had helicopters, right? But here's what happened, America. And I'm going to tell you straight, and these guys, they probably will agree with me, but if they don't, that's okay. When I first came on the job in the late 80s, I came on the job pre-Rodney King, okay? If you ran from the police, whether it was on foot, in a car, motorcycle, scooter, or skateboard, when you got caught, you were going to get your ass beat, okay? And the reason you were going to get your ass beat is because you had endangered the public. You had
the officers.
And the officers. And you this was done to discourage people from running, okay? It was just par for the course.
But no, that was no official policy, though.
There was no official policy, but it was certainly practice, okay? You got your ass beat, and then you got handcuffed. And hopefully the ass beating stopped after you were handcuffed, but it didn't always. Just keep it real.
And the suspects expected it.
And the suspects, okay. And so then what happened? Then we had Rodney King, right? And there was some much-needed reform that came about. One of those reforms that came about was that an ass whooping wasn't part of the package now. And so now there's less incentive.
The unofficial one.
The unofficial, right? There's less incentive now to not run, because now people are thinking, well, before you would think, well, if I run, I might get away. But if I don't get away, I'm getting my ass beat. Man, I better turn around and put my hands behind my back. Now it's I might get away or I might go to jail. But the ass whoop is not part of the equation. And I'm not saying that it should have ever been part of the equation. What I'm saying is because that's no longer there is why you guys are seeing these vehicle pursuits and people are being endangered. And
well, I think it is still part of the equation because criminals know that in today's political climate, hey, if I get my ass beat, I might win money. I might get some money from the city. There might be riots. If they really hurt me, there's going to be riots in the street.
How about if we change the verbiage that, first of all, stop making rock stars out of these people. It's not entertainment. And second, the second you take off in a car, you have lost the terms alleged and presumption of innocence. They're fucking gone. By the fact that you're running in a car at a high speed, you have lost your presumption of innocence. You are guilty of something.
Well, now you are, even if you weren't before, you are now. Evasion, felony evasion.
Our legal system doesn't allow that. That's why we have to say allegedly.
And there's a problem right there. You just said it. We have a legal system. We don't have a justice system. Big difference.
Wow.
Roger, right.
That's deep.
Man.
Deep.
That's good stuff. Okay, so we're going to start rapping here, but and we're going to have to circle back.
I don't know how to rap. That's not my game. That's you guys.
He was a rapper,
me,
so
right. Yeah,
go ahead and wrap it up, George.
So
wrap it up.
Let's rap with a W.
Wrap it up.
We're going to wrap the clip.
Boom.
As we get started. Okay, so
good callback.
So
I like that.
So fortunately / unfortunately, there are 5 more trials to come in the Freddie Gray situation. So although the first one ended in mistrial, we may see that officer be tried again. I think we'll know today if he's going to be tried again or not. But there are 5 more trials to come. So we're going to have to circle back around to this and catch up with that on a future show.
Right, and those trials are going to be impacted by what happened yesterday.
Definitely.
And
they were always going to be. They were always going to be. No matter what the verdict had been yesterday or had there been a verdict.
Right.
If it was guilty, not guilty,
because
or
intent is what they're going to have to prove, and I just don't see it.
Well, and that's what everybody's saying is that the thinking is that the prosecution shouldn't have started with this case because it was the hardest one to prove. But they were trying to set up dominoes to
Right.
fall in a particular order, and it didn't work out. So, but that's what happens when you have politically motivated prosecutions.
That's why if I ever get accused of anything, I'm going to trial. I want a jury.
Oh, you better.
I want a jury of not my peers sitting there who are emotional and don't know the difference between feelings and facts. That's
Well,
what I want.
You also have
You-
12
you-
people that were too stupid to get out of jury duty.
Wow. Intern Darren, how was jury duty, by the way? He just came back from jury duty.
Wow.
He,
He gave it a thumbs down.
yeah, he did give a thumbs down. All right, folks. So listen, you can follow us on Twitter at Right Along Radio, on Instagram at Right Along Radio Show, or you can send us an email at rightalongradioshow@gmail.com. It's been interesting today having Roger Ride here.
Roger
Hopefully-
Rod.
Hopefully he'll be back around to join us on future shows.
Am I still welcome?
Oh,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Certainly.
This is like a setup for a joke. A Mexican, a black guy, and a white guy do a radio show.
Well, you see, we swapped our white guy out for today. I had to call on a
Well,
central casting
you know what?
and ask for
The
a
white guys
cop,
are
right?
interchangeable. They're interchangeable. That's all right.
Aren't we always?
So, hey, we'll catch you guys next week or on the Right Along Radio Show here on Morris Media Network.